Chapter 59. Tahon returns to the army. The people have arrived. Let's go, Long Wenyu said excitedly. Go. Naturally, no problem. However, our trip may not be too smooth. Mr. Gu nowadays. His reputation in Metropolis may have been swept away. When we arrive, be careful and safe. Li Shenji laughed. Oh, pay attention to safety. Fame has been swept away. Gu Hai was puzzled. Mr. Gu still doesn't know. Li Shenji laughed. Know what? This time, when the Northern Expeditionary Army of Daiwan returned to the dynasty, it was supposed to be a great victory, but in Kaogwo City, it was a series of defeats, especially the millions of generals captured by Dahon. They were even more ashamed of themselves, and after returning to the dynasty, they had no face left. But the director of the Wu Yu Academy, Shikong, composed a 7-character poem for them to comfort them. Li Shenji laughed. Shikong composed a poem. The name of the poem is Tahon returning to the army. A great poem that surprised the wind and rain with the stroke of a pen. At that time, a poem under the book, the wind and clouds changed, a vast righteousness out of the paper, millions of defeated troops. All hearts stirred. The poem spread throughout the metropolis. The entire metropolis is sung. Li Shenji laughed. Tahon returning to the army. What was written? Long Wenyu curiously said. Li Shenji looked at Gu Hai. Slowly, he read it out. The gentleman has never gone to the villain. The villain is like grass that goes and grows. But to make the inspiring heart naturalized, there is no need for the district to fight for it. Li Shenji recited it sentence by sentence. What, asshole, damn Shikong. The group of ministers behind Gu Hai burst into a rage. This was calling Gu Hai a villain. Their group of defeated troops, that group of captives were instead gentlemen. Their group of invading troops were gentlemen instead. When they lost to the emperor time and time again, it was the emperor who defended the land of Great Han. In Shikong's mouth, they were instead treacherous villains. The crowd of courtiers were instantly furious, their eyes showing indignation. What does this poem mean? Long Wenyu was unsure. Li Shenji, however, looked at Gu Hai and explained with a smile. The meaning of the poem is, why would a gentleman want to cross the path of a villain? Villains are like weeds. They go away and appear again. Just encourage yourself. You don't have to fight for the villains. As for Han returning to the army, it is written to those defeated troops. And they were defeated to Mr. Ku. So this villain is talking about Mr. Ku. What? Bastard Shikong, cursing my brother-in-law. Old thing. Long Wenyu instantly rose in anger. Li Shenji looked towards Gu Hai. However, he saw that Gu Hai's expression was quite calm. Thanks for your concern, Camp Master Li. We should go to. Li Shenji saw that Gu Hai actually did not get angry, as if he had punched a fist on cotton. A pang of displeasure ran through his heart, and he nodded his head. Li Shenji, a flying boat, was inhabited by Divine Mechanism Battalion disciples. On Gu Hai's flying boat, but with Bing Ji, Rulu and some Dahon officials, along with Long Wenyu's group of people, he slowly left Kaogwo City. Farewell, Your Majesty. The group of officials respectfully sent the flying boat away. A month later, on the 9-5 Islands, in the middle of the Imperial Palace, Gu Qin was looking at a huge model in the shape of the entire 9-5 Islands. A large number of officials stood on the side, and Gu Qin pointed above the model. Here. This place hasn't been laid out with spirit stones. We need to arrange for someone to go as soon as possible. Gu Qin said in a deep voice. Yes. This palace has promised a father emperor. Within half a year, the big formation all set up can float into the divine continent Earth. Relocation of the capital is urgent. Must give me to speed up the progress, not to have any more conditions. Gu Qin coldly said. Yes. The crowd of officials responded and droned. Rumble. Steeply, a rumbling sound came from outside the palace. The emperor's news has returned. Gu Qin's complexion moved. as he stepped out of the Grand Hall. The crowd of officials also eagerly followed them out. Above the sky, there were 80 flying boats parked, and above the first one was standing Gao Xianzi. Gao Xianzi, greet the Crown Prince. Gao Xianzi paid his respects. No need to be polite, Senior Gao. Father has a letter from the Emperor. A hint of anticipation flashed in Gu Qin's eyes. Gao Xianzi jumped off the flying boat and landed in front of Gu Qin. Smiling faintly, he said, "Yes, the Emperor asked me to lead the First Legion back and station it on the 9-5 Islands in case there are any changes." Oh, 800,000 troops. Gu Qin looked up. On this 800,000 army, each of them had an extraordinary aura, countless more austere than those Thousand Island sea cultivators recruited by Chen Changshan. Yes, Gao Xianzi laughed. 800,000 troops. Most of these were brought back by Gao Xianzi from the Divine Martial King. Only a small portion of the former 6th Legion of the Zhenan army, led by Bailey War, had returned to Yingzhou, and most of them stayed under Gao Xianzi's command. At this moment, along with Gao Xianzi, they had come to the 9-5 Islands. What else did Father say? The Emperor is now traveling to the Daiwan Imperial Dynasty. The Emperor explained that he asked you to set up as soon as possible, so that when the Emperor returns from the Daiwan Imperial Dynasty, it will be the time to move the capital, and the 9-5 Islands will enter the divine continent Earth. Gao Xianzi solemnly said. Good. Gu Qin nodded. Great Yuan Imperial Dynasty, Metropolis City. Before the flying boats of Gu Hai's group arrived, the earliest messengers had already brought the news to Metropolis City. In Metropolis City, outside the court hall, a large number of officials were gathered at this moment, divided into 4 groups. One was a group of officials dominated by Chong Sheng, and one was dominated by Mo Yaika, an official group headed by Qin Zaibai. There was also a group of officials, at the center of which was a middle-aged man wearing a gold silk python robe. The man's face was broad, his long hair combed back, and his face was majestic and arrogant. Within his eyes, there was a hidden light of arrogance. A messenger from Great Qian will be arriving in my metropolis city in the next few days. Qin Zaibai frowned. Lord Mo, what did that messenger say? Chong Sheng frowned. Everyone looked at Mo Yike together. Mo Yike smiled slightly bitterly and said, didn't say much of anything. Only that County Lord Wenyu had traveled to Daiwan on behalf of the Great Qian in order to hand over the 2 countries for good relations. County Lord Wenyu. The crowd frowned for a while. Only County Lord Wenyu was sent, not the Crown Prince. Isn't the specification of Great Qian's dispatch too low? Just a county princess. Qin Zaibai frowned. Mo Yaika shook his head and said, Lord Qin, County Lord Wenyu, this weight can be heavier than the Great Qian Crown Prince. Qin Zaibai was slightly stunned. Everyone nodded their heads. Who was County Lord Wenyu? One of the most favored county lords of the Great Qian Sage. If her status was low, no one would be high. Who is the entourage? The middle-aged man in the gold silk python robe said in a deep voice. Li Shenji, Gu Hai. Mo Yike solemnly uttered these 2 names. Saying these 2, Mo Yike's eyes narrowed slightly. Obviously, he was extremely familiar with these 2 as well. Oh, Chong Sheng and Qin Zaibai all raised their eyebrows. The gold and silk python-robed middle-aged man revealed a cold smile. Hey, Li Shenji. Gu Hai, a traitor, a villain. A group of officials on the side laughed and chimed in. Mo Yaika shook his head. King Shikong, I know. You just wrote a Tahon returning army not long ago, counting down Gu Hai. However, my humble servant still has to remind you. Oh, the golden silk python-robed middle-aged man looked at Mo Yike suspiciously. This ancient sea, do not underestimate it, Mo Yike solemnly and incomparably said. Ha 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 ha. King Shikong, however, burst into a steep fit of laughter. Lord Mo, You're overthinking it. You've come into contact with Gu Hai. Do you think this king hasn't studied him? Indeed, this person is extraordinary. But where did I go wrong in calling him a villain? He stole the divine Foothill dynasty and isn't a villain. He took advantage of the war between Daewon and Doqian to fish in troubled waters and strike behind their backs. He's not a villain. What am I saying that's wrong? Yes, he's capable, but so what? This is Metropolis, the capital of the Yuan dynasty. He's a dragon. So even if he comes, he'll still give me a coil. Not to mention that he's not. King Shikong coldly said. Mo Yaika was slightly worried. An official on the side chimed in. Yes, Lord Mo. The king wrote a poem to expose his true colors only. Gu Hai is a villain. He can play two tunes, he can play chess, but can he know the way of the book? He comes from the barren sea of 1,000 islands. How many books has he read? Can he compete with the king? The word of mouth. His Majesty didn't say anything to him either. And if he doesn't measure up, he's making a fool of himself. Mr. Mo is overly concerned. The king is right. Gu Hai is a villain. He doesn't deserve today's achievements. To the Han returning army is really well written. Your Majesty pointed out the essence of Gu Hai in a single word. This poem has benefited us a lot. The way of the book is not at all something that Gu Hai, this ignorant child, can be involved in. If he dares to come and act recklessly, he will only become a joke in the world. All the officials have attached themselves to drinking King Shikong. Obviously, the effect of a piece of To the Han returning army was very large. And it was even written by King Shikong himself. Most of the officials stood on King Shikong's side, thinking that Gu Hai was that shameless villain. Mo Yaika smiled slightly bitterly and stopped explaining. The book road does have the magic of the book road. At least this compulsion above, the chin, chess and painting cannot compare. The ambassador from Doqian. I don't know how to greet. His Majesty has been closed. What should we do now? Qin Zibai frowned worriedly. The crowd waited patiently for a while longer. A eunuch slowly crossed out of the main hall. My lords, His Majesty seems to have made a breakthrough in his seclusion. He won't be able to come out for a while, so please return. The old eunuch smiled bitterly. His Majesty made a breakthrough. The faces of the officials were delighted. But, at this moment, such a big event, His Majesty is in seclusion yet. Since His Majesty is in seclusion, let the Ministry of Ceremony greet the great Qian dynasty's envoys. King Shikong faintly said. The crowd nodded helplessly. Only Mo Yaika and Chong Sheng, however, frowned slightly and looked at King Shikong. The Ministry of Rights, the Minister of Rights, wasn't that King Shikong's proc? Then this matter, Mo Yaika and Chong Sheng glanced at each other, and a bitter smile appeared in both of their eyes. In this matter, King Shikong had interfered. The two of them were helpless for a while, and it was not good to intervene. After all, according to the rules, this is how it should be done. Your Highness, it's a matter of state. I still hope that peace will prevail, Chong Sheng said with a slight smile. King Shikong shook his head. It's because it's a matter of state. That's why we must not let go of the slightest bit. The envoy represents Doqian. The two countries are meeting. Naturally, we can't degrade the prestige of my Daewon. Moreover, the shame of the past in the Great Han. We must find it back this time too. But, Chong Sheng was slightly worried. Do you guys think I'm taking it all for granted? Oh, there is a basis for me to say that Gu Hai is a villain. And there is also a basis for things being like things and people being like people. Just yesterday, I happened to arrest the people who claim to be Gu Hai's friends. Two villains who are backstabbing behind the scenes. Hey, King Shikong coldly said. Friends of Gu Hai to backstabbing villains. Who? Mo Yaika said doubtfully. One is called Ziwei, and the other is called Chong Sheng. King Shikong said in a cold voice.